Do you have constitutional questions? Get constitutional answers. We'll be answering your constitutional questions live, so get ready to call in now. Are you a prosecutor, law enforcement officer, or local government employee? Want to make sure you are executing the laws in a constitutional manner? Are you a city council member, township board member, or state legislator? Want to ensure the laws you pass are constitutional? Perhaps you're a citizen who wants to know the proper limits on government and the protections for your God-given liberties. Regardless of your role, call me, Constitutional Attorney Catherine Henry, with your constitutional questions during our live call-in show now at the phone number listed on the screen. And remember, together we can restore freedom.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, none of it is apparently working. That's fantastic. Let me know if you guys can hear me. I don't know why my audio has to play. Hard to get so many days, but let's see. Loud and clear. Okay, there we go. I had to make sure you guys could hear me before I started talking. All right. So, hello, and apparently. Wow, as soon as I get the mic working, then I get a frog in my throat and have to mute it. All right, guys. Hello, welcome. I'm Constitutional Attorney Catherine Henry, and this is Restore Freedom Weekly. Still calling it Restore Freedom Weekly, even though it's every other week at this point. But hey, those little videos that I do in between are supposed to fill in the gaps for your desire to learn more about the law and the Constitution. So today, this is our live call-in show, hence the display on the screen next to my face. Of course, if you're listening later on the podcast, you don't see any of that. But anyway, thank you to all of you who are joining us already in the chat. I do have my trusty little calling app open, so if you guys want to call in today, hopefully everything else works on the technology side for that. Let me just see here. There we go. All right, switching all kinds of screens today. So go ahead and give us a call if you have a question for me about the law or the Constitution. What I want to do is, first of all, hello to all of you that are joining in the live chat. It's nice to see you guys. We have Blue Line Transparency, Big Bad John, Troy, DJ Plast, Kinrock, of course, Lori. So anyway, it's nice to see you guys joining today. What I want to do until we get somebody asking questions today is just to, Big R, I'm sure you are not too stupid to talk live, but feel free to ask a question in the YouTube live chat if you'd like to do it that way. If you do so, then I'm sure this is queuing of Lori to type in the example, but go ahead and type the word question in all caps so it's easy for my eyes to catch when I'm scrolling through the live chat, especially as you guys get chatting back and forth amongst yourselves. It's going to make it a little hard for me to see what questions are more for me versus chat amongst yourselves. So put the word question in all caps, and then go ahead and put your question in regular caps for the rest of it. And hopefully that'll enable me to be able to see what all the questions are in the live chat today. But don't hesitate to call in as well. The call-in number is on the screen, 616-303-0093. So there it is. There's what it looks like. Lori probably has it copied and pasted and ready to go for all the times we have the show. But anyway, so let me see here. All right. So what I wanted to do is tell you a little bit about what Emma and I did yesterday. We spent the entire day with our good friend Maya Hahn, who's also originally from Michigan, but now lives down here in Florida. And we drove up to Tallahassee, and man, I miss the good old days of being able to just drive over to Midland, because whether I lived, or Midland to Lansing, whether I lived in Midland, whether I lived in Belding, whether I lived in Hudsonville, it was pretty much like an hour and 15 minutes to get to the state capitol. I wish it was only an hour and 15 minutes to get to the state capitol. It's probably like an hour and 15 minutes for Maya to get up to me. And then from my neck of the woods, we'll meet in Daytona usually at the freeway and head on over to Tallahassee. And it's like another 4.5 hours easy. So anyway, it's not something we can do on a regular basis. And Maya and I have been up there 3 times this legislative session so far, because unlike Michigan, which thinks the whole point of the legislature is to give people government jobs and just, keep going and making laws nonstop all year long. The Florida legislature is truly a part-time legislature, and the session, the main legislative session, is not to last more than 60 days. 60, as in 2 months. So anyway, that is, I see we have some questions coming in, so I'm going to start looking at that. But just briefly to tell you, I will be posting, hopefully in the next 24 hours or so, but cleaned up versions of the speeches that Emma and Maya and I gave on 2 very important bills in the legislature yesterday. It seems like it was all week long, but I guess today's only Tuesday. So we were only there a day, but it felt like an eternity. Anyway, it was a great day. Both bills squeaked through the last committee, which was the Senate Rules Committee in the Florida legislature. Huge committee. We got there, I don't know, we were rallying with all the senators and their legislative aides all morning long and into the early part of the afternoon, trying to get their votes for these 2 bills and make sure, bills would make it to the agenda and things like that for the House companions. Anyway, we went to the committee hearing. I think we showed up to the room like at 1:30. It was started promptly at 2. And wouldn't you know that we were lucky enough that our the first bill was sponsored, 1288 was sponsored by Senator Grahl. And she was sitting right at the front, and they started with her bills right away. I want to say our bill in particular was the second one called, because she had several, but basically like first up, right? That senator went first, and it was the second bill heard on her list. And so it was great. We got to speak on it. Lots of people spoke on that bill. It actually got quite vulgar and ridiculous. The Democrats were attacking, quite literally. In fact, at one point, the mic had to be turned off for one of them. But I think he was the vice chair of that committee, was getting kind of nasty with one of the speakers that came to the podium as a Christian. I don't remember what organization, but it was some sort of Christian organization he was speaking on behalf of. And they started grilling him. And that's not customary. I mean, you should be prepared to answer questions, but it wasn't even legitimate questions. He was not wanting a dialogue. He was not wanting an actual answer. He wanted to attack this man. So anyway, it got quite interesting, but that bill did pass committee. And then, don't you know, there were 27 bills. And about halfway through, she made an announcement that the Senate president had allowed her to continue the meeting or the hearing, so that even if we were there till midnight, we would have that hearing done, because today is the official last day in the Florida legislature for committee hearings to be heard. So if your bill has not made it through all of its committees by today, it's dead. That's kind of how it works. So anyway, 27 bills, you can imagine that is a long time. And some of these bills, it's like an hour and a half on a bill. So you're just crossing your fingers and hoping that some of these are so benign that they don't have tons of people speaking on them. But, you know, it is what it is. So don't you know, the second bill we were there to speak on, only two, happened to be, well, the senator left the room. And I called his office and they had no idea where he was or if he'd be coming back. They actually said they didn't know for sure that he would be coming back to handle those bills. So he eventually came back in the room, and his bills were the last ones heard on the agenda. So we were in the room, and it wasn't, let me put it this way, they were both together as number 13 and 14 on the agenda. But one of them was heard as second, and one of them was heard as 26th, because his other bill was heard as 27th. So we got to wait there all that time. And anyway, I was super proud of Emma, because at 11 years old, and those of you who are new to me, you can watch our last episode from 2 weeks ago, and she actually sat in next to me. So I had her on screen for just a little bit there. But anyway, she did phenomenal. She needs, last year at the homeschool co-op, she was able to take a public speaking class, which is something that's good to do in a co-op, because obviously that's a little bit harder when you're homeschooled and you don't have siblings in the house that, you know, she doesn't have siblings in the house. She has one sibling in the house and he's never home. And Christina has moved to Missouri, so she's not here anymore. So at any rate, it's a little bit hard for her to get the concept of public speaking, right? It's different when you're just speaking in front of mom and dad. So anyway, it was a great opportunity with Miss Kristen last year, but Miss Kristen's not teaching that this spring, so Emma wasn't able to do that. So I told Emma that as part of her 5th grade curriculum, she needed to do some public speaking. So I told her she got to pick which bill she spoke on, and then she needed to come up with some main points, some main talking points. And she wrote her speech, and she practiced it and practiced it and practiced it. And then she even had an opportunity to practice that speech in front of a legislative aide for one of the senators, which was phenomenal. And he gave some feedback, and it was great. And all the legislative aides on the 3rd floor and the 4th floor of the Senate building were very encouraging to Emma when we told them that she was going to be speaking in the Rules Committee that yesterday. They were very encouraging. And anyway, it was great. So she got up there, and some of you might have seen the video already, but she did phenomenal. She's 11 years old, and she knocked it out of the park. She didn't have like a shaking of her voice. She wasn't trembling at the podium. She did want her mom to stand next to her, so I cleared it with the Sergeant of Arms ahead of time. In fact, they called Emma's name first, and then they called my name. So she did amazing. So we both spoke on that one. And then she actually waved in support of the last bill, 1270. And that was against, it would prohibit discrimination based solely on vaccination status. Anyway, so she waved in support, but I spoke on that. And man, I hate when I get choked up in a public speaking scenario, especially when you have a very limited time frame. Lucky for us, the only 3 people to speak on that bill were me, number 1. Number 2 was Maya Hahn. And number 3 was Surgeon General Joe Latipo. So, and one of the Democrats, I've later found out he's the minority leader, decided to grill me on some of the aspects of what I was saying, not even on the legal aspects, on the personal side of things. And then he decided to grill Joe Latipo for quite a while. And then a few of the senators in the closing remarks during their debate portion actually addressed what I said. And so that was interesting. But I guess when you're one of 2, I'll just say civilians, right, non-government employees speaking on this bill, and they know that you've been there for the 5 hours or whatever it was that we'd been sitting there. Yeah, they gave us credit, 5 or 6 hours. They gave us credit for sitting there and speaking on these. So anyway, what I'm going to do is scroll all the way up and see where the first question is. Okay. Who does the district attorney work for? So they're asking, does the district attorney work for the city, the police department, or the people? So when you're talking about, it depends on what aspect you're talking about. So district attorney, I don't know what jurisdiction you're in. Sometimes it's called a county attorney. Minnesota, it's the county attorney. In Michigan, it's a prosecuting attorney, which is also on a county basis. I think down here in Florida, it's assistant state attorney. So, excuse me. So it just depends on what it's called and the variation. So depending on what you're talking about, I'm going to pick on Michigan, for example. So I mentioned the prosecuting attorney is a county level prosecutor, but there are also city attorneys. Now, typically a city attorney in Michigan is not an office held by a particular individual, but more commonly it is a law firm that is contracted to do that work. Now, I will say, and I don't know, I assume he still is, but Jim Branson, for example, in the city of Midland, all the years that I lived in Midland, he was the city attorney. And so he actually had an office, a city attorney office in the city of Midland. And it's a city of like roughly 50,000 people or so. And so, anyway, he had an office and he was the city attorney. But like the city of Belding, for example, Karen McFadden was the city attorney and did the prosecutions for that municipality. But she had, I think her law firm's like McFadden Law or something like that. But it's her own law firm in the city of Belding. And so she's just contracted to do that work. So I don't know what exactly you're asking, but as far as, how the actual employment is set up, that varies depending on if it's a city prosecutor, whether it's a county prosecutor, etc. And so depending on how that is set up depends on how they get into that position. So like I just explained, when it's a city attorney, it is often a contract position. But like with Jim Branson, he was actually an employee of the city. And I believe that the city commission voted to hire him just like any other appointment that the city makes. I don't believe that in any jurisdiction the prosecuting attorney ever works for the police department. I don't believe that's ever a thing. They might be answerable to perhaps a city manager, perhaps city council, something of that nature. When it works best, what I think should always be the case, is when they are elected positions, such as, the Ionia County prosecutor. So I think it's still Kyle, but might not be anymore. I don't know. I haven't checked recently. But when I lived in Ionia County, when I still lived in Michigan and didn't even live in Ionia County anymore, he was the prosecuting attorney. And he was elected by the people. I voted for him the first time he ran. So at any rate, that I think is what's necessary, is when you have prosecutors who are elected and directly accountable to the people, but they're not always put in place in that mechanism. Now, if you're asking in the sense of, well, who do they really work for? Who do they really answer to? Like, do they work for us, kind of thing? So let me put it this way. I'm going to give you an analogy, and that's the legislative aides that I saw yesterday. We were sitting down with one of them, and actually we were all, Maya and I and this legislative aide, who was super cool to chat with and very helpful. We were all sitting down and trying to talk to Emma about how to not be nervous and, just giving her encouragement. And I said, I had said to her earlier in the day that don't worry about it. These individuals, these senators that you're going to speak in front of, they work for you. And she just looked at me like, what? And so I said, when in front of this legislative aide, I said, correct me if I'm wrong, but wouldn't you say that everyone, all those senators and everyone here, they work for us. They work for her. As a citizen, they work for her. And he said, absolutely. He said, all of our paychecks are paid with tax dollars and we work for the people. So in that sense, yes, every single public employee is, they have an oath to the Constitution and they work for we the people. If they're not working for we the people, they don't belong in government, because the only purpose of government is to secure our God-given liberties. That's the purpose of government. So at any rate, I believe that answers your question, but again, I don't know exactly what you're getting at with that. So, hey James, nice to see you joining us today. Let's see. Did I scroll? It looks like everything stopped. Oh no. Okay. I know you guys don't just stop commenting. And I know that I wouldn't only have one question, so something must be wrong on my end. So that's the challenge for you guys now, is to call in, just like we're having a caller right now. Lori, be ready for this. Good afternoon. This is Catherine. How can I help you?
Hey, good afternoon, Catherine. This is Derek from Reno.
Hi, how are you today?
I am wonderful. So my question is, so I'm charged with crimes for calling somebody a snitch on a YouTube title we had talked previously, as well as passing out leaflets and flyers to advertise the video. And the leaflets and flyers have that person's address and say the word snitch on it, and not a very good photo of her, right? And so I like to learn from analogies. So my question to get on that point is, Sean of Long Island Audit, he purchased an LED billboard truck, and he has parked it multiple times out in somewhere in New York in front of the prosecutor's residence, and as well as some other elected officials. It is a public street. You know, you're allowed to do that, I believe. But does it come a time, if say if he parked that billboard truck there in front of their house every single day, or say what if the billboard truck had that person's address and says they're corrupt or whatever his message is? Does that become a crime at some point if it's done over and over and over, and it's just saying that that person is corrupt or says something, you know, not very nice about a person? And then what if it does say their address on it? Does it become a crime? Does it become harassment?
So,
or stalking or something?
yeah, you asked some good questions, and I'm going to start by saying I haven't really thought about that yet before. So this is just off the top of my head and trying to have some, good constructive dialogue about it. But my instinct is to say, especially this day and age, if it's a home address, it's not a work address. If it's a home address, then sharing that publicly is not, that could very well be harassment right from the get-go. And here's the thing, there used to be a day and age where, first of all, we didn't really have internet, right? We didn't have Facebook, we didn't have, all this social media and stuff like that. Even when we started having the internet, we didn't have the social media, right? You sound remotely as old as I am. Maybe not. Maybe you're far younger and you've always had social media, but I have not always had social media. And so, but back then we had phone books. People actually used actual real phone books with the white pages, and you'd be able to look up people's phone numbers and addresses and whatnot. But nowadays, that's not commonplace. We don't get phone books. People often don't even have a landline to list in a phone book. And the custom of our society has changed at the same time as we were, expanding and having all this, instant messaging, so to speak, like instant blast out, not just direct messaging between two people, but instant ways to blast out things across social media and other platforms. And so, since it's not commonplace for people to advertise their home addresses. I mean, I have a P.O. box now. There was a point in time, until this house actually, I had advertised, for 10 years, my home address was my law firm address. And so I advertised that with no problem. In fact, when I started speaking against the governor's executive orders in Michigan in 2020, I stood on the steps of the Michigan Capitol and I gave my personal cell phone number, my email address. When I did the petitions across the entire state, we had hundreds of thousands of people signing them. My home address was the one listed at the bottom of each petition. So I, wasn't afraid of anything. Now I've taken a different stance because I don't know how much politically active I'm going to be, but I do want to be able to shut off that stuff from, my kids and my home and, just like, heaven forbid if I have a relapse with the cancer and things take a turn for the worst or something, you know what I mean? I want to be able to have home that's not actively out there. So I have a P.O. box for my law firm. So, I don't put my address out there. And I have an office phone that I advertise that number, and I do not regularly give out my cell phone number. So it just depends on, the scenario. If it's someone who advertises like on their Facebook profile, if you, without being friends with them, can publicly see their address or their phone number or their email address, and then you share that publicly available information to other people, then I wouldn't think that that would be harassment. But if you are sharing their address or their cell phone number or their private email, and there's someone who is careful about that, they don't advertise those things, they're not, publicly displaying that. It might be in an obscure website somewhere, right? But, for a person to regularly think, hey, this is, to reasonably think, hey, I'm advertising this information. If they're not regularly out there advertising that information, then my instinct is to say that could be instantly harassment. And it depends on, what it's for and what's the purpose. Because even if it's a positive thing, like let's just say you found out we'll pick on me. Let's just say you found out recently about me, you never knew anything about me, and you saw my channel and you loved what I did, and my birthday's coming up in July, and so, at the end of June, you found out my address, and you started blasting it all over, and you're telling people, I want everybody to show up on July 3rd to Catherine's house, and give her birthday presents, and give her donations to keep the Restore Freedom thing going, and you put it out there publicly. That could still be harassment because, I don't advertise my home address. I don't want people coming out to my house, even though you might have the best of intentions. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And that was my concern, is that perhaps a line was crossed at that point. But it just there has to be some line, where free speech can happen. So say it's not a public official like that, or somebody that's out in the open like that, and you're saying something not so nice about them. I'm not even worried about defamation. Obviously, if you can show that what you're saying is the truth, it's not defamation anyway.
Correct.
But I'm more worried about criminal, because that's what's going on here.
Right.
There's just this serious intent, like they just want to stop me, they want to make me be quiet. And at some point, I should be able to, so if, say, the address is not on that, but I want to show, the purpose, snitch was a poor choice of word. It wasn't intended to incite. Poor choice of words, sure. But it had a purpose. And the purpose was to advertise for a video to get, more viewing of a video to show this woman is, calling police and making false claims when her car is being lawfully repossessed. She's saying somebody's out here stealing my car.
And I want to pause you just for a second, because I don't even have a problem so much with the word snitch. My bigger problem would just be with the sharing of an address if she's not someone that regularly, puts that out there. Mm-hmm. So if you call out somebody, and so that's the thing, that's the difference between free speech. Giving an address isn't so much speech in that regard. Do you know what I mean? That's not like you sharing your opinion about something. It's not you compiling facts that the public needs to know. The public doesn't need to know where she lives. But if you want to get people to see a video of somebody's horrible actions, like let's just say it's, Karen's gone wrong, right? I that's like one of my guilty pleasures, I guess. I love watching when real actual Karens get karma on these little, YouTube shorts, right? I love seeing bad people who just don't let other people live. When they try to say, well, I'm going to call the cops on you and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that and you got to do this. You can't play on this playground with your kids and you can't, whatever, right? I love seeing them get what's due to them. But so, if I were in that situation, I would, sure, I'd love to record. Usually I'm more like thinking I'm just going to put this person in their place in the moment, but shoot, if my husband was standing there and was recording it, yeah, I'd probably play it later and put it on my YouTube channel or whatever. Because it's not about, I wouldn't attach their personal address. You know what I mean? I wouldn't want to make it so that it becomes, and I even hate using the terms, the lingo, like doxing, but when you're sharing that kind of personal level of stuff, because is it really about that? Does it really have anything to do with the actual address? You know what I mean? Like
that makes perfect sense. Yeah.
So at any rate, I would encourage you to keep standing up for your rights when it comes to the general information that you're trying to share. If you have a video of something going down, or whatever, you've just done some research and put some stuff together, and it's not, So here's the thing. And forgive me, you probably gave me a little bit background before. I don't know if you said, I just don't remember, but. Do you do like general First Amendment auditing, or what do you?
On occasion, I do.
Okay, so this is advice that I've given before during these shows. So for First Amendment auditors, I strongly encourage people to do that, but to do it the right way, right? There are right ways and wrong ways to do pretty much everything in life. You cook the wrong way and you can burn yourself or cut yourself when you're cutting things up or whatever, right? So there's a right way and a wrong way. But with First Amendment auditors, let's say you see, you roll up on a situation and don't quite expect, all of a sudden there's like 2-3 cop cars and there seems to be quite a commotion, and you're like, gosh, I want to make sure. Well, if you're a true First Amendment auditor, I will say this: you're not going in assuming who's doing wrong. You're going to go in saying, I might need to film this to cover the cops' backs. I might need to film this to cover the citizens' back. We don't know. We don't know what's going on here. So you're just there as a neutral news source covering a situation. And so in that sense, let's say it ends up unfolding to be a domestic violence situation. So in that scenario, I'm not so much worried about the alleged perpetrator of the domestic violence, although everybody should have due process rights. What I would be concerned about in that scenario is, video being displayed publicly that exposes that domestic abuse victim, because they don't need to be victimized by having that plastered all over the world, right? If I were in those shoes, I wouldn't want that kind of out, that kind of stuff out there. So I just always say, just be careful that, and that's maybe like an extreme example, but I would just say when you're out there doing First Amendment auditing or anything where you're, whatever your channel is about, whatever you're doing, that you're taking care to not disclose private information that shouldn't be, like have that respect for your fellow citizen. And so, like, for example, when this is a public service, the trial that I was helping him with recently, that I don't remember, I think we were working on the trial phase for like a year and a half. But anyway, when we were working through that, the point was made that he and I at different times both made the point that he wasn't in Social Security offices, like with his, camera zooming in on people's documents. There weren't even any documents filled out that were out in the public for people to see. But he was taking care, and he said he testified he reviews all that information before he plasters it online. He reviews it to make sure that if he's in a situation, if he's in a location where there might have been personal sensitive information like that, he just makes sure, okay, I didn't catch any of that. It's not going to be in my video. It's not going to make it to the, to the internet. So he's auditing the government office, but he's not exposing data or sensitive stuff about the citizens that are there that have nothing to do with it. So anyway, so just something to keep in mind. But other than
so
that,
then I would have a
yeah, go ahead.
so then I would have a duty then. I hastily had published the video, but looking back at it, the video that's in question, and from the prosecutor's standpoint, it was, she was a video of a car repossession taking place, and she's dialing 911, and he tells them, what's 911 ask you? What's your address of the emergency? What's your callback number in case we get disconnected? That was recorded, a video of her actually on the phone giving her address to 911. Totally lawful to be recording it, but then should I have a duty then to go and edit that before I publish? Would that then be harassment if I'm publishing that?
I would,
and
yeah,
you see what I mean?
I would think so. I mean, as far as strict legal liability on that, I don't know, every jurisdiction. I don't know what the laws are about that. But just from, a moral standpoint, and the fact that, if you think about it, we have the right to essentially do whatever we want to do in our lives until the point we then are trying to infringe on the rights of others. Okay? And so that's where you just look at it through that lens. Are you infringing on the rights of others by, blasting a certain video out? And if you're not, then great. If you are, then are there ways that you can modify that video, cut things out, blur, whatever needs to be done? And you've seen it. There's tons of videos out there that people put out, and there's like a little spot blurred, or there's wording blurred, or there's something, right? And it's kind of like, at times they explain it. Sometimes it's obvious. Sometimes you're like, why in the heck is that part of, what's blurred? What's going on here? I would do that. If it were me, I would do that. I would not have somebody's personal information like that broadcast. Now, if it's, and let me be clear, because there have been some recent callers about, when they're having interactions with public officials or being charged with harassing public employees. If it is a publicly accessible work phone number and it's a publicly accessible work email, and so you're sharing that information that's literally available on a website somewhere, and they work for the government in some capacity, I'm not talking about that. Share that all you want, because that's a different scenario.
The prosecutor in Pima County wouldn't agree with you.
Well, then they're stupid. And I would gladly look in the camera and say, if you're a prosecutor and you think that someone can't share the public phone number, the work phone number, work email of a public employee, if you think they don't have the right to do that, you are stupid, and you need to move to another country. Right, that's the
right to redress your government.
Absolutely, it's part of that. Absolutely part of that. You cannot redress your government collectively, and you have the right to, I'm losing all my words today. Holy cow. What is the actual term that's in? It's not gather. What's in the First Amendment? Good Lord. Oh, this has never happened to me, but I blame the cancer. Hold on. I'm going to my Constitution in shame. Right to assemble. There we go. Definitely not gather, but you guys should have known where I was going with that. Anyway, it's part of that. It's part and parcel with that. You have the right to petition your government for redress of grievances. You have the right to peaceably assemble. You have, and that's where peaceably assemble, right? You have the right to say, we're going to assemble and we're going to ask for this. And, whether this day and age, it could be physically assemble. You also have the right to assemble in terms of like, hey, everybody, let's do mass phone calls. When I was getting violently and illegally arrested in 2020, if it weren't for people seeing the live stream and all assembling to work together to say, hey, everybody, let's flood their phones and let's call and make sure, I would have been thrown in jail and a lot of other worse things would have happened to me. I was still arrested. I was still charged. I still had 2 years of a court case to fight. But it would have been far worse for me had people not flooded their phones, because before they got to taking me off the property, sheriff was on the phone with the deputies going, you are not bringing her here. Oh no. Because we got people threatening to show up, and people are driving from all over the state and beyond. They are going to cause problems. We are not going to have her housed here. So there's a necessity. That is an aspect, so assembling with phone
I'm
calls,
so happy that
emails.
that you say that, because people think that I'm crazy, that in my situation right now, the first thing that I want to do in my defense is to make further videos. I mean, a judge in my case made a prior restraint order saying that you not be able to post notices about this named individual, and there was no hearing about it. It wasn't even the prosecutor that asked for it. It was like a court services person that just stood up. Oh, hey, Your Honor, could we get an order? He said, yep, so ordered. I said, wait a minute. I don't get a hearing. I don't get anything. It's just, and what does that even mean?
You should
And
have objected to it right away. And you should have.
That's what I was yelling at my lawyer, and he's like, oh, no. Just don't worry about it. I'm like, what? What?
Just don't
you are
worry
just
about
worthless.
it. What kind of dumbass lawyer do you have?
Yeah, thank you. And so people think that I'm crazy right now, for continuing to make videos about this. Like, I want people to be aware of this, to know what's going on. I mean, I totally understand that perhaps I crossed the line by using an address, and I'm willing to accept some responsibility for that. But they're talking about felonies and internet stalking and misdemeanors and gross misdemeanors, and there's probably going to be future indictments because I continue to make videos about it. But it's like, okay, I'm from here forward, I'm happy to make sure that there's no addresses and phone numbers, and because I realized right after I'd done it, like, man, I probably shouldn't have done that, even
well,
even though I know I have these rights. But
before I lose this train of thought, let me kind of jump in on that, because you said doing future videos. Now, I'm going to give you an analogy. I don't know if it's going to quite be the same, but in my case, I wanted CYA, right? I wanted the world to see, I wanted to cover my ass, and I wanted the world to see every single process, every single step of my case. And of course, it was 2020 and 2021 and into, was it into 2022? Yeah, 2022. And the judge was closing the courthouse. He was stopping people from coming in the courthouse. He was stopping people from coming in the courtroom. And then he got to the, sorry, I have the hiccups. He got to the point where he even prohibited me from going to some of these hearings and said, nope, it's just got to be by Zoom. And I'm like, this is not okay, especially for me. I have a hearing disability. If it's a one-on-one situation and my freedom's not at stake, I make do, right? It's not like I don't use a telephone, but I don't always catch everything. And especially with Zoom, there's so much delay. And the judge would still wear a frickin' mask when he was on Zoom. So then I can't read lips. And then he would be behind, depending on the camera angle, he'd be behind plexiglass in a mask for Zoom. So at any rate, I wanted to make sure that all these videos of my case were, that people were, especially since for the most part, they were not even able to be there in person. But even when he finally opened up, and the very last hearing, he let the public in, but only limited people, and it was ridiculous. I wanted to make sure that all those videos got out there and people could see what was going on, and they could see the ridiculousness, and at least have courage that somebody with a law degree is out there fighting back too. Not all attorneys are inherently evil or stupid. So at any rate, he ordered every time he released, and I had to pay $20 each time I wanted a copy of the video in my own case. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? So it was my only way to get it out there. And so I paid the $20, and then he ordered that I wasn't allowed to share it with anyone. I even had a hearing after my case was dismissed, after the case is closed. It was dismissed, and I said, Yeah, so I need to be able to, publicly show these videos. And I said it's for news purposes, and it's also for, well, at times I argued it was for my continued defense, and then once that case was over, I said it's for ongoing legal situations to prepare for a civil lawsuit against those involved. And he's like, he literally he laughed, he mocked me, and he said that, it's not for entertainment purposes, and he literally put an order that said I'm not allowed to share the DVDs. I'm not allowed to do that. Well, good for me that other people were screen recording, and some of the videos have already surfaced. I think more will probably surface at some point because people have told me they screen recorded it when they were happening. But for me, the thing is, I chose not to pick that fight and start sharing them on my channel. I've never taken the DVDs and just uploaded them and shared them with the world and said, whatever, screw him. I chose that because of the practical implications, not because I think he's legally right to try to stop me with that. I think something that's so blatantly unconstitutional, a gag order, is inherently unconstitutional. But especially while my case was going on, I wanted nothing extra that would complicate things at all. So to you, the reason why I wanted to pause you on all that is that's what's going through my head when I heard you say that. And for you, just for practicality, not for legality, not saying that there's, not some sort of constitutional protection here. Practically speaking, I wouldn't do that if I were you while your case is pending. Because you need to be able to fight the one legal battle and make it about what it is, simplify what's going on. And then if you want to do something else later and whatever, you know what I mean? Like, take it one step at a time.
I feel like my back is just against the wall right now because at this point there's a warrant out for me. And I see what kind of lawyer I have defending me. It's going to be a no bail hold, and it's probably just contemporary in Reno that they just push your trial out. Just plead guilty. Just plead guilty to something. Just plead guilty. That's the only thing your public defender is interested in helping you with. Is just plead guilty to something. They already offered it me, and they were trying to push here. Just plead guilty to a felony. I'm like, you are completely out of your mind.
Yeah.
How about you give me $1 million and apologize for arresting me on this? That's my counteroffer. How about that? And so you see what kind of lawyer I have defending me.
Yep.
And it's going to be a no bail hold, and they're if I ask for a speedy trial, it's going to keep getting pushed out. My speedy trial is going to be a year or two later. I'm going to sit in jail for a couple of years waiting for it if they whatever time they do arrest me. So
but don't forget,
I feel like my back is just against the wall.
But don't
I have
forget
no choice
to try
but
to utilize
to do this, to look for a lawyer.
But don't forget to utilize your the possibility. I mean, if they're going to keep you in jail pending trial, you could file a writ of habeas corpus in a federal court, and you might even have state court options there. I don't know anything about Nevada, but you can file for a writ of habeas corpus, and if you really
I got some experience with that. I've successfully sued that county several times with 1983 pro se. So I do have some experience with that, and I got a paralegal degree a number of years ago. So I've got some experience in what I'm doing.
So
that's why I was so explain to me what you mean with the habeas.
So don't take, if you feel like your attorney is really going to sell you out and you can't trust your attorney, then end that attorney-client relationship immediately, because you will be bound by what your attorney is doing.
Mm-hmm.
And the best.
I just don't like the idea of representing myself. I think that's just a terrible idea. But it's like I have tremendous experience in this county, and I mean, like that lawyer I had that represented me at a preliminary hearing in this matter, and made that order that that didn't want to object to that prior restraint order, was so far one of the best lawyers in my personal opinion that I've ever seen as a public defender, and he's no longer on the case because he had got a job as a prosecutor now, and now I have a new lawyer who it's been a year nearly now, and my new lawyer, he's not even wanting to respond to me. He used to be a prosecutor in the same office, and he just doesn't even care. He said, yeah, I'll stand up for the First Amendment, but so far he's not doing shit for me. So I'm just, there's the defenders, public defenders there, they don't care. They're like, well, you were bothering that person, so you should probably just own up to it. Well, I don't think that I'm going to be
Bothering
able
people
to,
is
with
not a
any
crime.
lawyers. Thank you. So I mean, back to my original question is, hanging flyers up. So I mean, where is a limit with hanging the signs up? Okay, so say the address was not on there. That's a bad fact for me. I wish that wasn't the case. If I need to own up to a misdemeanor on that, perhaps that's something I should do. But at this point, they laughed at me when we offered a misdemeanor. So they said, no, we want prison time out of this. Like, for
Prison
what?
time.
Oh yeah, no, the Washoe County District Attorney is just dead set on that. They're like, no, you need to go to prison over this.
Prison.
This is
Okay.
horrible. So what's going on in Reno right now? There, a young girl, maybe 9 or 10 or something like that, named Isabella, had tragically passed away just like within a month ago, and people there are just going crazy over it. I mean, the allegation has had something to do with the parents, and there's people in jail over it. And man, there are people just on social media going crazy, saying this guy should be put in a wood chipper and just all kinds of really just bizarre things, and just turns into a mob mentality here. But then there's other people that are hanging pink ribbons up all over on stop signs and just all throughout town. And I just I don't want to steal the girl's thunder because it's terrible what happened to her. And I love the idea of the pink ribbons in support of this girl, and for the safety of our other children. So I love it. But I'm taking pictures of that. People are publishing these on the internet, saying, look at these, the pink ribbons here we hung up today, on a stop sign. Well, I went through my discovery and found photographs that the police have of my signs. With it's literally their photograph that they took of this person, a mugshot of somebody, and that's what's on. So it's a really bad mugshot of this person getting arrested high on all kinds of drugs, and I had hung those signs up, advertising my video. So say, okay, it's a bad fact that there's an address, but say if the address is not on there, right? But that is then that would be a
I mean, without me seeing
defendable
it, I
situation
can't.
here, but.
Yeah, without me seeing
Well,
it, I
I'm
can't
certainly
say.
going to email. I'd emailed you maybe a month ago. Maybe you didn't see it. I had worked on a video. It's got some glitches in it. I'm going to finish that, and I'll email it over to you, and maybe you can have a look at it at some point.
And I will
brought it
do
down
my
to about
best.
20
I
minutes.
still get flooded
You're busy, but
with emails.
yeah.
Yeah, I get flooded with emails, and I'm still, especially after my trip to Tallahassee yesterday, I am wiped out. I got to survive the rest of the week before the weekend's
I mean,
here.
you are you're an amazing person, and I definitely appreciate what you do for us on here.
So just in general, what you're saying, no, I wouldn't say just having someone's picture. Again, it depends. In general, I'm not talking about, so I'm saying in general, it depends on the context. So if you're taking a picture of somebody,
Sure.
If I'm on my own property and I'm like, I'm sitting on my front porch, which has like a little half wall or whatever, somebody comes up and they're taking my picture or they're zooming in or whatever, that's not okay. If somebody's flying a drone over my house or whatever, and they're taking pictures of me in that sense, or whatever, they're taking pictures of me when I'm in a doctor's office or something like that, that's not okay, right? If I'm out at a concert, my husband went to Rockville at the Daytona International Speedway 2 years ago with his brother and our son, and he took some pictures because I didn't go with him. He took some pictures. And yeah, there's pictures. There's at one point there's even video because I think it's video, but there's like, basically like a mosh pit. Like some of these people are freaking crazy, and my husband's like, I'm here for the music and a little bit of this, but like, what in the world's going on right here, So, but they're in the public, whatever. So, anybody who's part of those videos or part of those still pictures or whatever in that context. Yeah, well, that's kind of, you chose to be in that kind of setting that's out in the public. You know what I mean? So is there really the expectation of privacy is the whole concept. So if you're taking a picture of somebody while they have some sort of expectation of privacy, then, no, I wouldn't think that'd be okay for you to use that. But if you're taking a picture somebody's mugshot. Let's look at it this way.
Right.
A mugshot, think of how the whole mainstream media and all the Democrats loved to parade around Trump's mugshot, Rudy Giuliani, and all of them, right? Sidney Powell and Jenna Ellis, all of them. All their mugshots were like the center of news for weeks, if not months. Well, that's in the
And
public
then
purview.
Sheriff Grady Judd right now, I think he's in Florida, I believe, as well. He parades on his own show right now. He shows or his Facebook or media, whatever, how he does it, parades. Oh, we arrested this fine individual here, and he's showing.
Oh, are you sure you're not talking about my sheriff? Because my sheriff, Mike Chitwood, he's the asshole that he likes to perp walk even minor children and totally deny them due process. Wow. Yeah.
No, I'm talking about Grady Judd, but that's a new one for me.
Okay. Well, Mike Chitwood, he's a real piece of work. He was even on Dr. Phil recently talking about, whatever. Who gives a shit what he was talking about? It's awful. So it just depends. If you're using a picture that's out in the public purview, you're using somebody's public profile picture from LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter. You're using something that they've made publicly accessible. They are out in the public at some sort of big public venue and you take a picture of them. Okay, there's not an expectation of privacy there. But so just use that, that rule of thumb. Is there really some sort of expectation of privacy in that regard?
Well, something positive has come out of this. I never liked it. I never agreed with it. I mean, they're just in my county, they're happy to show on their website the mugshots of everybody as long as that person is still in custody. You can just search their name and Washoe County Sheriff, and it'll show mugshots. But right after this incident happened with me, suddenly they took it down. There's no mugshots of anybody, and it shut down some of the popular media sites like Reno Mugshots. There's some different groups about that. They would just, hey, look at this guy's mugshot, man, he's messed up. But that got shut down, and I agree with it because the point is that makes you look like you're guilty. What's the point in innocent until proven guilty? It's the biggest joke of our justice system. I think that you're innocent until proven guilty.
Yes.
So they got rid of that, and I'm happy about that. But I took advantage of it, for my purposes, and now suddenly it's a problem when somebody other than the sheriff wants to blast somebody. Now it's a problem.
Exactly. So here's what I'm going to say again, and I'm going to hammer on this. If you think your attorney, and I say this to you directly, but I'm going to say this to anybody else who's listening, if you think that your attorney really does have the potential to sell you out, bail out immediately. You would be better off, especially you, because you said you have paralegal background and you have, background with all these other cases. You'd be better off representing yourself than having an attorney that will sell you out. I was disgusted when I worked with, I've only ever worked for a couple of attorneys besides having my own law firm. And when I was an attorney in Minnesota, just starting out in my very early 20s, I was a single mom. I wasn't going to open my own law firm, right? I worked for another small law firm, and it was me, the boss, and one other junior attorney. And I worked with him on the family law cases. And I remember going with him, and we would have these, conferences with just the attorneys, and then we'd have the times where we'd be sitting in chambers with the attorneys and the judge. And he, the client would say to him, I remember her name. I'll just say her first name, Jen. And there had been a domestic violence situation, and it was a divorce with minor children, custody case anyway. And so she specifically told him, like, I don't, there's wiggle room, or I don't care about XYZ, all these other things. But the custody, I'm not okay with this, this, and this. And I don't remember the specifics of that, but, in general, like, I'm not okay if he gets any kind of major custody. Obviously, he's going to have time to be able to see his daughter, but there's safety issues, and there's all kinds of these other things, and they were real, tangible, legit concerns. And he would say right to her face, his name is Dan, the attorney. He's probably long retired, but he would say to her face, don't worry about it. I got it. We'll handle it. And then I would, as an attorney, I would be part of the conversations too, where he's talking with the other attorney or he's talking with the judge. And I will never forget the day that he sold her out And it wasn't in a court hearing. He just agreed straight up to allow joint custody and signed off on it, and it was a done deal. And then came out and told her, oh, this is what we're doing, this is what the judge is doing, and whatever. And I was so disgusted. That was the day I decided I can't work for this man. And I immediately, he was going to actually create a partnership with another small law firm with 2 attorneys in a neighboring town. And so I was kind of working for both of them at the time on their family law cases. And that night I met with the other attorney at his office, and I, called this emergency meeting, and I was so concerned because I did not ever like to let people down, right? And I didn't go back on my obligations, but I said, I just need to let you know I'm no longer going to be able to work on the cases because I'm going to have to leave the law firm, and he's technically the one that's paying my check, and paying my paycheck. And I said, I told him the exact situation that happened in court that day. I said, so it's going to be effective immediately. I cannot work for someone that does that to people. And there were some other, things that he had done to me in the office that, was uncalled for. But the straw that broke the camel's back was how he sold out that client. And so after I shared all of that with this other attorney, I mean, they were literally halfway into this merger deal. And he said, will you work for me? And I said, I can't work for him. He said, no. If I tell you the merger is off, will you come work for me? And he did that. He ended the merger right then and there. And he had to tell the other attorney, Dan, the next day. But I went to work for him in the neighboring town. And luckily for me, God was providing. But I didn't expect he would do that. But that's the thing. I saw it from the inside. And I know that I know it happens all the time. And now there's a difference between saying to clients, like, fast forward, say 10 years, and I was representing a guy named Kevin. And it was an ugly divorce. And there was a lot of, I forget all the terms these days, but like parental alienation and just different things going on. They had a son and a daughter. And the wife is unhinged. And I personally knew both of them. Small town, that's what happens. But she was unhinged, and he should have been able to get full custody, and she was fighting to not even share half custody. She was fighting to, to have full custody. And I remember saying to him outside of the courthouse one afternoon after we had had several different court hearings, and in chambers, the judge was basically showing his hand. And he said, listen, and keep in mind, we didn't have any of the testimony done. We didn't have the trial, the divorce trial yet and all that. But I said to him, here's where we're at. This is what they're asking for. This is what they're asking for property. This is what they're asking for custody and parenting time. And I said, unfortunately, this is what the judge just told both of us. He's going to do this. And it sucks. And it's wrong. And yeah, we can still have a trial, and definitely, I think you should fight for whatever I think you want to fight for. But I said, here's my problem. At the time, I had never done an appeal. And I said, I've never done an appeal. I can't do your appeal because I would screw it up. I don't know what I'm doing. And I do know that an appeal in Michigan, at least at that time, I said, it's not going to be any less than $10,000 for this kind of case and these issues. I said, and I know you don't have the $10,000, but it's your decision. Do you want to go forth and have trial and, get your do your best to lay the foundation, lay the record, and then know you're going to have to appeal this terrible decision from this stupid judge? Or do you want to do the best you can to work out something where you're getting not as bad of a deal by working something out with your soon-to-be ex-wife? And he chose to go that route. And I felt terrible, but I wasn't going to sell him out. I was going to tell him exactly what he was up against, and it was his choice. Because again, there's being legally right, and there's what can you practically survive as a person, especially going through a divorce, and your finances are being split in two, and there's, vindictiveness and all this other stuff, right? So at any rate, that's how I chose to handle it. I told the judge, my client is not going to be okay with that. There are significant safety issues. I've never represented a client when they are not legit, when they're bringing forth some sort of either bad allegation against the other parent, or they're in fact the abuser. I've been in those cases where, it all of a sudden becomes clear to me, oh yeah, this is the dude actually, he actually broke his kid's arm on purpose, or whatever the case is. That's happened to me twice, where I was on the wrong side of a case, and I immediately got out of that case. I said, I can't represent you anymore. I cannot fight for you to have custody when you've intentionally, you've told me you've intentionally harmed your child. You broke her arm. She's 6 years old. Like, no, I'm not going to help you get custody. So, at any rate, but I know that I'm unusual in that sense. And a lot of attorneys just look at the bottom line, and they look at what's practical and who's most likely to win or what's most likely to happen. And then they just go with that. They don't bother continuing to fight, and they're not willing to. But the least thing, at the very least, you need to have an attorney who's willing to lay the foundations and at least make the motions and do, put in that work. So if your gut instinct is saying this attorney that you have is going to sell you out, and from what you said to me, that the other attorney that agreed to the prior restraint order and didn't even object, that that's the best attorney, and the one you have now is even worse, fire him. You would be better off representing yourself. And by all means, I have tons of long, boring ass videos on my website, on YouTube, that can help you. I have tons of legal documents.
Well, the problem is, at this point, my judge, Barry Breslow, has canceled trials and canceled everything. Says no, until he's in custody, we're not proceeding on shit. So, and it's going to be a no bail hold. So, and here's what I think is going to be necessary in my case is an expert witness, and let's be honest, it's not going to be cheap. So, and if I was able to be free for this type of case, I don't see why they would want home arrest and huge amount of bail, like $30,000 cash bail on my case, and it's just insane. So at this point, now if failure is to appear, now it's just going to be even higher. If it's not just a no bail hold, I'm just assuming I'm not going to get out of custody until the case is over. Is what my assumption is. So I'm not going to be able to have any income to hire my own, expert witness, like an expert, a constitutional expert to come out would be, I think, my number one witness, because the jury's not going to know about this, and obviously I don't think the police know anything about it, about the Constitution. I mean, in my case, I have in the body cameras I've gone through, when they're towing my vehicle, they're like, man, I would just wanted to smash his window in, and my supervisor said, no, you can't do that, because they wanted to inventory the car, and surprisingly they didn't, because I had a newer car that you can lock from the outside with keys inside of it, and so they were unable. They said, give us the code to get in, and no, absolutely not.
Right.
So they're talking about, well, can you just scrape the bottom of this car up real good when you get it up there? I mean, these cops are they're just not the type of police that we need in our society.
No.
But that's just the facts of what I'm dealing with.
So, and that's where my advice
I
is
think
always
I
out
need
there.
an expert.
Yeah, but
I don't know if I'm representing myself. It's going to be on me. Well, if you can't afford it, then you just don't get an expert witness to explain to a jury. Look, people do have these rights. It is okay.
Here's what I would do.
Brandenburg versus Ohio,
But here's what I would do. I would strenuously request that you have that you be able to represent yourself, but have the public defender's office as standby counsel, so that they can then be there. Whatever resources you would get through them, you would still be able to have those resources. And if you're locked up and you can't get to, you have no access to a computer or research or whatever to put together a motion, or, a petition for writ of habeas corpus or whatever is needed, then at least, you still have that attorney. But, if that's what I would do, really in any case is, it could be really scary to go through a case and defend yourself when it's especially when it's a criminal case. So ask for that. Ask to represent yourself, with a public defender as standby counsel. So,
okay.
I mean, that's actually what Foshin and I did, because, there ended up being a lot more hours than I thought I would have in just a standby counsel. But I knew I couldn't take on a case for free and, totally represent him and have all that pressure on me. So I was there as standby counsel so that, because at every single hearing there was like a threat they were going to grab them and lock them up, and then, what would happen. So at any rate, that's what I would do.
I mean, do they pay standby counsel anything remotely reasonable
I don't know
for
how
their
their
time?
system works. I know that I didn't
Yeah.
get paid when I was a public defender. Actually, in both in Minnesota and in Michigan, they were two totally different systems. In Michigan, I was paid hourly. I use that term loosely. In Minnesota, I was paid a flat rate. I mean, like I got paid a salary, right? And I got assigned
Right.
all the cases in that county. So different systems, but neither one was acceptable. I mean, in Minnesota, when it was
I've heard that.
the
Yep.
flat rate, it was 22,000 a year before taxes, before forced retirement came out, before the mandatory union dues, all that garbage. So I mean, how can somebody? I mean, granted, it was half-time employment, but still, when I have law school loans, I'm supposed to survive on even double that if that's a half-time employment job.
Right.
So anyway, the in the other case, I don't remember what it was, but it was the hourly rate was insanely low. Definitely not. I didn't do it to make money. I did it to try to do the right thing and help people with my law degree. So,
Mm-hmm.
in fact, I ended up getting blacklisted because the way they did the hourly stuff, that's just I would submit all the hours that I would spend on a case, and they'd be like, well, you can't keep spending this many hours on a case. And I'm like, whether you're going to pay me or not, I'm going to have to do the work. I mean, paying me is one thing, but you can't tell me to not, be prepared for the hearings and file whatever motions I need to file, and, request discovery and interview witnesses and do whatever it is I need to do. So I ended up getting blacklisted in a certain county, two counties actually, because
I mean, it's touching what you're just saying to me, that it's the principle of what you're doing. I mean, so in my spare time, I just love watching these videos, and yours had popped up at one point, and I've been watching yours. One of the videos that's just fascinating to me. I already knew about Brandenburg versus Ohio, but there's one on YouTube in particular about it that shows some pretty cool videos and people talking on there. And one of them is the Representative Eleanor Holmes from D.C., who is a black woman, and she was like 30 years old or something at the time, working for the ACLU, when she represented Clarence Brandenburg in the Supreme Court case. And this is a very violent, racist KKK guy, and she's a black woman. And just it's touching what she said, that I just relished in the opportunity to make my case and defend free speech, by defending somebody that I just profoundly disagree with. Can't stand the guy, what he says, but you know what? We have to resist the government telling us that your speech could be bad, because if we allow the government to decide that your speech could be bad, they could decide that our speech could be bad too. And
right.
That's just, it's touching to me that, the people that do that work.
Yeah.
That's why I sincerely appreciate what you do for us here on YouTube.
Absolutely. And, as long as I'm still feeling like I'm actually making a difference, I'll keep doing it. So, I wish I could help you more, but that's probably all I've got for today. And I can't believe that I've been on the phone with you for almost an hour. So I probably should hang up now. But
Okay.
Don't hesitate to call back into another show, and hopefully some of what I've been able to tell you was able to direct you in the right way. So.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, and have a great day.
Yes, you too.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right, guys. So, let's see. I'll throw some links on in the meantime. And actually, I'm going to throw that on. So, okay, there are some questions. Somebody asked, have you heard about the proposed legislation in Tennessee? I'm not even going to, I did read the rest of it, but I have not heard about any proposed litigation in Tennessee. Just want to answer you. I'm not ignoring you. I just don't know anything about that. But did it answer? It hung up. Okay, I was just going to answer that phone call, and let's see if they'll call back. Let's see. Okay, so I think it must have skipped a whole bunch because I saw the chat was continuing to go and I'm not seeing the questions. Good afternoon, this is Catherine. How can I help you? Or not? Okay. I will call them. Oh, they're calling me back. Third time's the charm. This is Catherine. Who am I speaking with?
This is John Q. Public on the chat, ma'am. Hopefully it doesn't hang up again. I don't know why it's doing that.
Okay, that's fine. And where are you
Anyways,
calling from?
I am in Warren, Michigan.
Oh, okay.
I've talked to you before about some Second Amendment issues, and I've done some additional research. I just wanted to know if you have seen any of this. There was a Representative Williams that just came out with a Second Amendment resolution that was yesterday, and came out about the same kind of information that President Trump had come out with about 2 months ago. And this resolution is being, I guess, submitted to secure our Second Amendment rights. But it seems like these 18 or 19 blue wall states don't want to honor the Second Amendment still, even though these resolutions and bills are being put forward, they're like ignoring them. But what I wanted to talk about or ask about is, I said I had submitted, I don't know if you're familiar with this, the Google's Artificial Intelligence Legal, where you can go on there and ask legal questions, and it gives you an answer based on the information that's available to it on the internet. Have you heard of this, ma'am?
I have not, no.
Okay. Well, let me just go over just real quick, because I know you want to get going with your day here. I asked two specific questions pertaining to the state of Michigan. Is the Michigan Constitution, Article 1, Clause 6, the right to keep and bear arms, the supreme law of Michigan over state statutes or state laws? And then it goes into a big dissertation about it, but the basic paragraph it says is, yes, Michigan's Constitution, specifically Article 1, Clause 6, which guarantees the right to keep and bear arms, is considered the supreme law of Michigan over state statutes or laws that contradict it. This means any state law that infringes on this right would be deemed unconstitutional and invalid. The other question I asked was changing it up a little bit, and I asked it again. Is the Michigan Constitution, Article 1, Section 6, the right to keep and bear arms, the supreme law of Michigan over state statutes or state laws? And again, it says, yes, Michigan's Constitution, particularly Article 1, Section 6, which affirms the right to keep and bear arms, holds the supreme authority in Michigan over state statutes or laws. This means that if a state law conflicts with the right to keep and bear arms, as outlined in the state constitution, the Constitution provision will prevail. Well, yet we have all these unconstitutional gun control laws that have been placed on the books here in the state of Michigan, and yet when you go through asking a legal question on the internet, which is supposed to go through all available information that's available out there on the internet, it says otherwise. So I'm wondering why these politicians and lawmakers and, of course, the three witches that we have here in Michigan can't seem to understand even what a computer and artificial intelligence seems to understand. And then the final thing I wanted to bring up is, I don't know if you're familiar with Michigan State Police's legal update from number 86 that was from October 26, 2010. It goes over about firearms. Open carry of firearms. It says, you will not find a law that states it is legal to openly carry a firearm. It is legal because there is no Michigan law that prohibits it. So
Okay,
they're
sorry.
basically
You gotta give me a
saying
second.
that
My
the
sound-
Michigan
can you hear me?
Constitution, Article 1, Clause or Section 6, whatever you want to call it, is not a law. They're basically saying this, our Constitution is not a law, which we all know that the Constitution is supposed to be our primary laws.
Can you
And
hear
then
me?
it goes on to say, Attorney General Opinion 7101 guidance and states that a person, while carrying a handgun in a holster in plain view, is not waving or displaying the firearm in a threatening manner. Thus, such conduct does not constitute brandishing a firearm. Yet people still get charged with this here in the state of Michigan.
Can you hear me?
And Yes, ma'am. Can you? Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I'm here.
I've been trying to stop you for a minute because I had
I'm sorry.
something happen with my audio. It disconnected for some reason, and then I missed the first part of what you were saying. So,
Oh boy.
your question is about Article 1, Section 6 of the Michigan State Constitution, but what specifically is your question?
My question was, if the lawmakers are making these laws and the politicians are making these laws, and the information is readily available that any layperson can ask the question on artificial intelligence, or information is available readily on the internet, how can they continue making unconstitutional laws when it's very clear that the primary law of the state of Michigan is that we have a constitutional right, irregardless of whatever state statutes or laws that you try to put into place? Okay. You know darn well it's unconstitutional. So how are they able to continue doing this, knowing full well what they're doing is illegal according to our state constitution?
So I'm going to go ahead and answer that, but I'm going to go ahead and disconnect just because we've already had some issues on my end. I think it started on your end and then it ended up being on my end. So I'm going to go ahead and disconnect just so I don't lose you and leave you hanging on a question, but I'll go ahead and answer that, okay? So,
okay.
All right. Thank you so much for calling in. And like I said, I'll answer it right now as soon as I hang up.
Okay.
All right. Thanks. Bye. Okay, so sorry about that, guys. I don't know what all the technology issues are. I guess the devil doesn't like the truth getting out there. As far as his basic question, though, and I don't think he was talking over me. It was doing something weird, and it was saying that my microphone wasn't working in Google Voice, so I don't think he could hear me the whole first time that I was doing that. So no, don't think that he was talking over me. I have had a lot of callers talk over me, and I don't think he was talking over me. At any rate, the issue is, how are these legislators? Well, first of all, I want to say somebody asked something about, isn't Tim Walz the governor of Michigan? No, he's the governor of Minnesota. I have lived in both states, not while Tim Walz was governor. But anyway, no, the three witches that the caller was talking about is the Secretary of State, the Attorney General, and the Governor of the State of Michigan. So Governor Whitmer, Jocelyn Benson, the Secretary of State, and Dana Nessel, the Attorney General of the State of Michigan. And all three definitely know my name. That's for sure. We did not make friends in 2020 and 2021. But regardless, the question was about how is it that you have legislators that are making laws that are blatantly unconstitutional and violate clear parts of the state constitution? Not even like, just hold off on the thought of the U.S. Constitution for a minute, because that adds a whole nother layer of things, but just within that one jurisdiction, just within the confines of, say, the state of Michigan, but it could be any state. How can you have a state legislature in a state make laws when it plainly violates the state constitutional provisions? And the thing is, I would say that those laws are void on their face. They have no value. Unfortunately, the way our system has been set up is that we treat the government, and I say we the people, for far too long. The vast majority of citizens will treat the government as though they have the right to do whatever they want. They can set up whatever restrictions, whatever laws, whatever policies in place, and use those to regulate the people. And sorry guys, I'm about to sneeze. They can use all that to regulate the people, and then if we want to challenge it, then we've been accustomed to, well, then you have to go to court, and you have to fight a long battle, and you have to wait till, say, the Supreme Court does something about it. But in the meantime, they've just created 25 more unconstitutional laws, at least, right? So it's just a problem of, the system isn't set up to do things that way. And of course, our judiciary has let us down. By and large, across the board, at every level, they have let us down because they are not declaring as inherently unconstitutional all of these laws. And certainly our Supreme Court has let us down for many, 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 many years, and is still letting us down. They're kind of they're inching towards freedom and doing the right thing, but they're not going all the way there. I mean, the Bruin case, they screwed that up big time. Who cares about all these historical contexts and what was lawful back then and how many laws were on the books about this and that? No, who cares about how many laws were on the books in the 1700s about things? The point is we have a constitution that says no to those laws, period. Of course, I didn't switch my screen. But at any rate, that's the answer. The answer is our society has allowed it to happen. It's unfortunate. We need to start banding together. Many more of us need to start banding together and saying, no, if there's an unconstitutional law, we're not going to follow it. We need to start getting people put into positions. That's why you have county commissioners, for example, in the state of Michigan that were passing Second Amendment sanctuary cities or Second Amendment sanctuary counties, where, you know, as a government, as a collective government, they're saying we are not going to enforce these unconstitutional laws that are going to infringe upon the citizens' Second Amendment rights. We're not going to do that here. And they took a stand. And then you need other people to get on board. You need the prosecutors, you need the sheriffs, you need other elected officials to start standing up and doing the right thing. So we need to put people in all of these levels of government to start pushing back and saying, no, I took an oath to the Constitution and I cannot uphold this unconstitutional law. So at any rate, that's where we're at with that. I do know there, and I don't know what you're talking about, John Q. Public. You say you're not a rude person. I didn't find you rude at all. If we're still talking about that you appeared to be talking over me, it's because I know you couldn't hear me the first several times I was saying something. You literally couldn't hear me. And I had to switch a setting on my computer because for whatever reason, the original setting stopped working halfway through the call. So no, don't give him a hard time. It was not him. Okay. Okay, some stuff I'm just gonna move on from. So I know that there were questions. It keeps scrolling. It keeps jumping on me, and I know that you had asked somebody, I don't even know who it was, I can't even tell you to ask the question again. So I know that there were questions out there. I apologize. I've tried several times to keep, it's like there's a big section where it keeps scrolling between and it jumps, and then it keeps jumping to the parts where Lori's telling people to call back in and stuff like that. So, okay. Well, I have answered, all, let me just double check here. I don't see any more questions. It looks like you guys are chatting back and forth. So, okay. All right. So, what I want to do, last little bit here, I'm going to throw the links on here. I want to encourage you to, I know it's overwhelming. I know it's overwhelming to hold the government accountable. We have the judicial branch that's all messed up. We have the executive branch and all of that entails the executive branch. I mean, you know, cops and state cops, local cops, sheriffs, you know, you have just in the administrative government officials and things like that. It's all, there's a lot. And then you have, you know, prosecuting attorneys, legislators, you have your city council or city commission, as it might be called. You have your county council or county commission. You have your state level, your state legislature. You have the federal, you know, you have Congress. You know, I have found it so overwhelming that I don't keep up on a lot of the bills at the congressional level. Quite frankly, I just don't feel that I personally am that effective at advocating in that realm. I know some, you know, some Congress members personally, but not enough to make a difference. And I don't have a big enough stage to be able to tell people what's going on at that level and have enough people make the calls and emails and phone, you know, the visits, writing whatever it needs to, writing the old-fashioned way, letters. I don't have a big enough stage to help influence enough people or inform enough people to then turn around and influence the decisions that are being made in DC. So, but what I would strongly suggest you do is that you don't ignore what's happening at all the levels of government. And especially if you live in a state where you have a part-time legislature, stay involved, stay involved and in the know, and at least pick one area of law what is the most important to you. Is it free speech, freedom of expression, like First Amendment type freedoms? Is it medical freedom? Is it Second Amendment and being able to defend yourself and defend others? Is it being able to have privacy, the right to privacy from government or from whatever? I mean, what is important to you? What freedom is important to you? And pay attention to that. What's happening to that freedom at your local government? What's happening to that freedom at the state government level? Try to stay informed and have your voice heard. I mean, when I sat there with Maya and Emma yesterday, it started off in that one committee hearing being, and there's no public debate, no public comment time during when a bill actually makes it to the Senate floor and you have all the senators there. There's no ability for them to hear from the public at that point. So, we were in this huge room in the Knott building, and it was filled. There were people in most every single seat. Some people even remaining standing in the back and off to the sides, and a lot of people were there to testify. And the fact that by the time, people would get up and go, oh, my bill was heard, and they're not really staying to hear what's going on. And maybe they drove even farther than we did and they needed to go. But it made an impact. The fact that Emma and Maya and I were there till the end. We didn't stay for the very last bill, but we were there for 26 bills to be discussed, debated, and voted on. And we spoke on that second to last bill, and we were the only ones besides the Surgeon General himself to speak on this bill. And when I had the Democrat minority leader of the Senate trying to grill me and try to rattle me and basically thinking he's calling my BS or my bluff or whatever, he used his closing remarks even to say that don't leave here without, if you're going to sit there and say that you're not getting X, Y, Z, don't say that that's happening without being able to tell me exactly who and when and where and why and all this stuff. Well, at that point, I'm like, crap, I gotta go. Like, we've gotta go. We have a 4.5 hour trip just to my house. Maya's got another hour. We haven't eaten all day long. We're hungry. I've got an 11-year-old who's starving. I can't stay. So I went up to the Sergeant of Arms with the one business card I had left from handing out tons of cards and trying to talk to senators throughout the rest of the day. Had one left. I did write my personal cell phone number on it because I no longer have my cell phone on my business cards printed. It's my office line. Wrote my personal cell phone number and told the Sergeant of Arms, who saw the whole thing, I said he was grilling me. He wanted information. I'm not just leaving, but I got to go. So can you give this to him and tell him he can contact me if he'd like? So I waited until I walked to the back of the room, and I waited till he got all the way over to him. And I saw him hand it to him, and the senator, he looked up at the seat where I was at, and I was standing behind that. So he looked and he found me, and I just went like, hey, good, you got my card? And then he gave me the thumbs up. And so I'm like, okay. So he knows that I'm not just like making these accusations about, what the discrimination based on vaccine status is really doing. I'm actually willing to follow up with that. I am welcoming a dialogue. But at some point, when you've been there for like 6 hours, you just gotta go. So at any rate, my point is, you gotta be willing to show up. You gotta be willing to have your voice heard, and don't think that there wasn't an impact. And I'm not special. All of you have the ability to make that kind of an impact if you go and you show up and you stick it out for a long hearing like that just to have your voice heard. And you think very hard about what you want to say, and you might only have 60 seconds to say it in. Anyway, so that's that. If you want to help me continue to try to provide these kind of tools to you guys, as well as doing the advocacy and things like that, please go ahead and hit us up at restorefreedomkh.com/donate. There's all kinds of different ways that you can donate. You could go to restorefreedomkh.com/support if you want to be able to donate or be able to buy any of the things. You can go to /shop, restorefreedomkh.com/shop if you want to be able to buy any of the items that we have. For a while when we were up in Michigan, we were having thousands of people wanting to buy the bumper stickers and the window clings and the what do you call these things? Pop sockets. It's of course upside down, but pretty cool pop socket. It's pretty crystal clear. It works really well. I always have them on my phones, as does Mike. But anyway, and he's pretty hard on phones, but these hold up. So in fact, he often transfers it from one phone to another when we get a new phone. So anyway, those are available just at our out-of-pocket cost. Anything on there is literally what it cost us to buy the item plus what it'll cost me to ship it to you at the cheapest possible rate. That's all we ask in exchange for getting something like that and being able to spread the word and restore freedom. Again, please always check out that restorefreedomkh.com/resources page. Utilize whatever you need to be able to fight your own fight for freedom. Use those resources to be able to put together a presentation to go and speak with your legislators about certain bills, or to be able to put together a motion to dismiss in a case that you're dealing with, that it's been brought against you. To be able to whatever it is, doing something, fighting for freedom at the local level. So at any rate, okay. Some comments just don't make sense, so I don't even know how to address them. So here's the thing that some people just don't seem to get. We have our inherent rights, right? We have the rights that are protected by the Constitution. And that includes, like with the 9th Amendment, all the unenumerated rights. We still have those rights. And the government cannot deny or disparage even those rights. But what we tend to forget when we're having these, keyboard warrior type moments is that there is a consequence. For every action, there's going to be a consequence. There's going to be a result, right? And what I keep hammering on over and over again is you have to use the tools that are at your disposal. And, that also includes being aware, having that situational awareness. Why I chose to not fight certain battles in the bigger war of, when I was being prosecuted unlawfully in Michigan. I could have fought every single thing along the way, and I fought on a lot of those things. I had a few interlocutory appeals. I would bring it up and then bring it up again to the Court of Appeals, and but you also have to keep in mind that there's not unlimited resources for most people. So you have to figure out how to best win the war and what strategy that entails, and know how to pick your battles so that you can accomplish your main goal in the end. What is your main goal? Keep that in mind. And so for me, I'm going to use, when I have a court case brought against me, first it was the Allegan, then it's the city of Ormond Beach for my house and the civil side of things. I'm going to use whatever resources I need to. If they're bringing their game to me, I'm going to play their game back at them. I'm going to use motions. If they're bringing lawfare against me, I'm not going to use lawfare against them. I tried a countersuit initially against all the officials that were bringing the case unlawfully against me, and the judge ended up dismissing it at a motion hearing, and at least to sever it, which would require me to file separately. And I may still do that at some point, but since the original case is still going on, my resources need to be going to that specific place. So at any rate, use those tools that are there. There needs to come a day where we don't have all these different court rules and statutes on top of rules, on top of regulations, on top of, case precedent and all these things where you have to look in all these places to figure out how to simply defend your rights. There needs to come a day where we don't have all that. And the constitutional amendment I wrote for the state of Michigan in 2020 did that. If we would have been able to get it on the ballot and get it approved by the voters of the state of Michigan, it would have been a game changer, not just for the state of Michigan, but the cards would have, the whole house of cards would have fallen, and people all over the country would have seen how you get back real freedom. But unfortunately, my amendment did not make it to the ballot, and it did not get passed. If you want to read it, if you want to take a look at what I was doing to restructure the judicial system, to restructure that inherent right to government records and access to that, to eliminate the need for standing where you have government officials that are doing wrong, all of that, take a look at it. It's on my website, restorefreedomkh.com. You can look for the Restore Freedom Initiative petition. Just type that in there, and you'll eventually come up with the actual PDF that we were collecting signatures on, and you can read the full language. Now, keep in mind that first page is just the 100-word summary, is not the whole petition. You have to go and read the whole rest of the PDF. That's just the 100-word summary that goes on the front. So with that being in mind, I'd love to have your support. I hope I didn't end up missing any questions that came in towards the end there. But hey, this is a public service. So awesome to see that you have joined us. I was talking all about you throughout this episode today. Anyway, just making sure I didn't see any last minute questions. All right, so it's been a pleasure to have you guys on, and I hope that you've been able to gain something from this. Like I said, I'll be hopefully releasing in the next couple days those videos of the speeches that we did, and hopefully they can encourage you to make some similar arguments in your own jurisdictions, or if you're here in Florida, even with the same legislators, because those bills are moving to the Senate floor. So we need to drum up the votes with senators. Also, please make sure that you keep in tune for some joint videos that Foshin and I will be doing about the Lane Myers case. Hopefully we'll get some of the logistics worked out so we can figure out how to joint live stream about that and do some problem solving and try to figure out how to move that case forward as well. So keep your eye out for that. And otherwise, I will see you the second Tuesday in May. That will be our next live call-in show. So please join us then. And I encourage all of you to join us then, as well as take a look at all those resources I spoke about earlier. With that being said, I will check you guys out at the next video, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week. Thanks, guys.
Our work to restore freedom would not be possible without support from people just like you. From the various software and hardware needed to the legal research materials, every dollar you can donate helps. Make sure to like and share this video too. And remember to follow and subscribe and click that notification button. Together,